You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com. Okay, welcome back to the TV Obsessive Podcast. My name is Caemeron and Ryan. I'm the executive editor of TVObsessive.com. Joined here today by one of our esteemed writers, Ryan Kirksey. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I'm doing exceptionally great. Have made my way through first half of The Bear season 2. Really looking forward to talking to that today. We've had some good feedback and good response to our first couple of episodes. Appreciate everyone for coming back for episode 3. And I guess my question for you is: you only eat food off chaos menus, right? You've told me that's the only food you eat.
Yes. I don't know. I don't even know.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what that means. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't know what that is. Why are you mentioning this? Now I feel like, I failed to do research. I think that it's like, well, I don't know. I'm just riffing on what the word chaos means. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Maybe we'll look it up for next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, as promised, we're back. We're going to dig in here today, ultimately on the first half of The Bear season 2, realizing that many people in the world have probably already at this point watched the entire season. We're just going to talk about the first half. I still haven't watched past episode 5. Have you, Ryan?
I have stopped at episode 5 for this conversation, so I've not made it any past that.
Yeah, same. I mean, and probably in part because we were going to do the podcast in this way. I didn't want to confuse myself by trying to pretend I didn't know things that I in fact know. I do that general writing on stuff too. We'll get screeners and things like this, and I'll try not to really get ahead, so I'm in the right place.
Yep.
So, okay, first though, as per usual here, we're going to hit on a few items in the news, things that caught our eye. We're by no means being comprehensive here in terms of TV news source, but well, I guess I hope maybe curating a bit in terms of, well, if it's the things we think are worth talking about, maybe you will also feel it's the things you think are worth hearing about. And we'll, chat a little bit about what we've been watching lately. Again, in this first part of the podcast, the first 2 parts, we'll do our best to avoid spoilers for the shows we're discussing. When we get to talking about The Bear, we're going to dig in there. We'll give another spoiler warning at that point before we start talking about The Bear season 2, which I'm looking forward to.
Same here.
Yeah, so here we are. It's June 24th, 2023. I feel like that's worth noting for some reason. So what's in the news, Ryan? What's catching your eye this week?
Yeah, one thing especially caught my eye this week. Not something that I necessarily watched, but because it was related to something that I used to watch. I don't know, Caemeron, were you a original Walking Dead show watcher when that show was on for 11 or 12 seasons, whatever it was?
No, actually, not really. I mean, I started watching it when it came out, like almost right when it came out, The Walking Dead, which at the time was, I don't know what the year that was. I feel old if we looked up what year, but it was probably like 2010, I'm guessing. And at the time, the very idea of a horror TV show seemed novel. And it was like, well, here's this TV show, it's zombies. It's like, I'm in, and I actually gave up after the first season because, one, I didn't feel like there were enough zombies, and 2, I kind of actively wanted the main character to die, and that wasn't working out so well for me, and I quit. And then it became more of a phenomenon really after that. I kept over the years, people would be talking about it, thinking like, should I give that show another chance? And what's funny to me is I would ask people that question, several seasons into the show, and they would always say, nah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so I think I watched the first 8 seasons of that show. I have a lot of people I used to watch that show with that bailed after a very specific scene in the finale of one season. And those that have seen the show probably know which scene I'm talking about. But I just checked. It was, October 2010 that show came out. So, I think the first show lasted maybe 11 seasons, but here we are 13 years later, still looking at new Walking Dead material coming out. And so this past week was the premiere of Walking Dead: Dead City, where
Right.
Maggie and Negan sort of have to make their way through New York City. And I noted that it was the most watched cable premiere so far for 2023, and all of their various platforms got more than 1 million viewers. And so it just kind of baffled me. And so how do they keep this thing going? This is, I think, the second or third spinoff. How do they keep this thing moving like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me, related to what I was saying, is I get the feeling when I talk to people that with The Walking Dead, even the original one, that at a certain point they were continuing to watch out of inertia. They were hate watching, or at least some of them, and because I would say, it does seem like everyone's watching the show. Should I give it another chance? Is it really worth watching? And no one would ever really argue that the answer was yes. So I mean, I do find it striking that it just continues on. And no offense whatsoever to people out there who love The Walking Dead. Good for you. Great. I wish that I believed that I could dial it up and love it for 11. Was it 11 seasons?
I think so. Yeah.
Give it to me. I'm totally like, I miss that. I miss the longer seasons of TV shows too. Like for me, it's a great experience to start watching several years ago. At that point, all the stuff was on Netflix, and I just started watching Star Trek. And I watched every episode of The Next Generation, and then I watched every episode of Deep Space Nine, and then I watched every episode of Star Trek Voyager. I mean, this took me months.
Yeah.
Because those are all 7 seasons, 22 episode seasons. I mean, you could do the math on that. How many hours of television am I talking about there? 7 times 22 times like 48 minutes probably.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'd love to be able to kind of lose myself in Walking Dead and say, oh, now there's more. So good for you. People are enjoying it. Speaking of Star Trek,
if there was ever a show that's emblematic of what the theme of the show is, that show just keeps coming back from the dead.
It's a zombie. Did there start being more zombies? Because that was, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but when I first started watching it, I was like, man, there really aren't a lot of zombies in this show, or a zombie show.
Towards the later seasons, it became a lot of hordes of zombies, right? So you can have these human stories for quite a while, and then there are just huge masses of zombies they have to deal with. But the story was always about, what do humans do in this situation, not how do humans fight zombies.
Yeah, I think that was my problem. It was like I'm not really interested in this kind of survivalist drama, particularly when I don't like the characters.
Yeah.
So anyhow. So I was gonna mention there, right? We were talking, I was mentioning Star Trek, but I also just read today that Paramount Plus is apparently canceling Star Trek Prodigy. Which, have you watched that at all? I actually haven't.
I have not seen. I am someone who watched the old Star Trek and then TNG with my dad, but I'm not current on any of the new stuff.
Yeah, I'm really not either. People tell me that Strange New Worlds is like really good and a whole lot of fun, and that catches my eye. I was watching Discovery for a little bit, and I kind of fell out in a certain way, and I could go on a whole thing here, but let's avoid that. I guess what stood out to me was there's a handful of shows that they were announcing today. Paramount Plus has canceled, and maybe they're shopping episodes to Fast TV, or like the commercial, like Pluto or Roku, or I don't know what else is in there. But Star Trek stood up because I was under the impression, or I'd be prone to think, that Paramount Plus would view this as a kind of tentpole, back when they were launching CBS All Access, which has now become Paramount Plus. Star Trek Discovery was, I don't know, the flagship, the Enterprise. They try to play on words a little bit in terms of, they made a big wager. They said, we're going to make new Star Trek, but it's only going to be on this new streaming service. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a sort of canary in the coal mine for modern Trek, as people will call it, or if it's just, well, hey, we had this one little kind of weird show, which I believe is animated and kind of geared towards children,
Yeah.
and we're just going to drop that one. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's interesting to me, not necessarily as a watcher of that show, but someone who it follows a lot of the real, I think, significant IP properties pretty closely, right? So Star Trek is obviously a massive, massive piece of history in television. And these are typically the things that you keep coming back to when you need something or when you want to produce something. And it's interesting that they are taking something apparently that season 2 was about wrapped up and said, no, never mind, we're not gonna go forward with this.
Yeah, right. And to be clear to people, you can go do your own research, but this is not just one of those things where they're saying, hey, we're not going to make the show anymore. No, this is one of those things we've started seeing rather recently, that I wrote this whole essay about creating existential dread in me, where you're having a streamer remove their own content, things that they themselves had produced in-house. They're saying this is not just going to be canceled, it's no longer going to be available on Paramount Plus. Yeah. So this is like what Max did with Raised by Wolves and Westworld and some other things. What I can't remember to rattle off all of the examples now, because we've seen other places sort of following suit in a way that I didn't see coming. I guess going back to 2010 or something like that, when streaming was getting going, I had the impression or just presumed that somehow the stuff that they were producing themselves would always be on their own thing. And it is the case that any number of things are going to these other ad-based streamers, what they call fast, so maybe they're not just falling completely into the void, but it is possible that something could fall completely into the void. Like maybe it has never been released on physical media,
right?
And they pull it from, the streaming service that created it, and it's gone. And the only way that anyone has it is through torrents or something like this. It's just kind of terrifying to me. But,
no, and it's happened several times. You mentioned Max, somewhere out there, for those of you that are, again, comic book movie fans, there is a Batgirl movie out there somewhere that's completely done, that's completely produced, that's completely ready to go. And Warner Brothers just decided to shelve that thing for reasons unknown. Maybe someday we'll see it, but this is just another example. It was there, that had stars in it. It had power behind it. It had a marketing budget, and they just shelved it, and we don't know why.
Well, I mean, we sort of do, I think, right? That and there's a background here. I do have to say, I don't fully understand this, and also don't let me ramble on too long, because I just start like ranting about the world. But that there's something about tax write-offs and things like this. And again, I don't understand the details, but I am personally of the mind that whatever those details are, the tax code is wrong.
Yeah.
So this is where I risk, you should not be able to save money by not releasing this film.
Yeah,
that exists. In my mind, that is perverse, and that should not be possible. And I'm sure, potentially some economist or accountant or something might get on here and start yelling at me, or business person. But whatever it is, I just think it's absolutely perverse
that's a weapon in the back pocket of any studio, any production house, any streamer. That's a weapon they can pull out and use at any time. Yeah, it's really quite sickening.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I don't fully understand it, because I take it must relate to some way in which I'm familiar with the idea of writing off business losses, but aren't these self-incurred? You know what I mean? I feel like you should be able to just say, well, we took a loss on that. Why'd you take a loss on that? Didn't try to sell it. It's just It's I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
care for it, but
Well, speaking of things that have been changing, we both noticed this news on Turner Classic Movies. You want to update us on what happened there?
yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of details, or don't want to get bogged down in a lot of details. People can go read about this. It is maybe more related to film than television, but I mean, it is TV. TCM is a TV channel. If you have cable,
Mm.
I've certainly known any number of people who turn on their cable TV and go right to Turner Classic Movies. I've known a couple people who watch nothing else at all.
Yeah.
Who would, if it disappeared, cancel their cable. But that's probably an outlier situation. But they made cuts to their staff. There's pretty massive layoffs. The numbers that I saw were that they're cutting their overall staff from 90 to 20, which is significant. Those cuts included people in positions of leadership. This is where you can get bogged down in details that I don't have for you. I don't know. There's been a change of leadership, so I don't know. Maybe there's some hope in the people who are taking over. They didn't just say we're killing it, but that's the fear that it's striking into the hearts of people. Apparently, this move spurred a combination of Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Paul Thomas Anderson to put in a call to say, don't kill this. We need to preserve the history of film, and so on and so forth. And that's about all I've got on that. So I mean, I guess it's developing, but it's just one thing amongst many. And
apparently Spielberg through Amblin, through his production company, released a statement from these three guys saying how discouraged, disappointed they were. They were going to call this emergency meeting, as you said, try to see what people could do, because they see the value in this. I know there's a lot of celebrity behind this movement as well. But to sort of something they can pull together, Spielberg, Scorsese, and PTA. That's pretty momentous.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea as just a mental imagination of this combination of Spielberg, Scorsese, and Paul Thomas Anderson walking in suits into Saslav's office, like a slow-mo shot, like Reservoir Dogs or something like that. But I mean, it's a worry. I don't even know if they have power. I mean, Scorsese does a lot of work in terms of trying to preserve film history. And perhaps the others do as well. And I don't know the details as much as Scorsese. So I believe it with all three of them. But if nothing else, some preservation of this stuff, because I mean, part of what is so potentially distressing about some of the stuff going on Warner Brothers Discovery is what they're doing with their own proprietary content. Yeah, I mean, you could argue, well, it's theirs, they can do with it as they please.
Mm-hmm.
But if what they decide to do is chuck it into the void, this is distressing to people, and others as well, Disney. And anyway, we should probably move forward here.
Well, good. Well, that's what caught our eye this week. I think we can, let's move on to sort of some things that we're watching in addition to the Bear. What's been on your screens this week?
Well, I mentioned to you that I watched the first episode of I'm a Virgo, and you said you didn't know. Do you know what this is?
I know nothing about it. I don't even know if I could tell you what service it's on.
It's on Prime Video.
Okay.
It's created by Boots Riley. You know who that is?
I do.
He directed Sorry to Bother You. And I'm sure it's done some other work that I'm not pulling up immediately. But it's an interesting show. The basic premise centers around 13-foot tall 19-year-old black man in Oakland, played by Jarrell Jerome. And I don't know, I watched the first episode. It's very outlandish, it's real. I mean, it's pretty cool. I think I'm going to watch the rest of the series. They released it all the other day. What about you? What have you been watching lately?
Yeah, I did catch the first. We mentioned this a little bit last week, but did catch the first episode of Secret Invasion this week, the MCU show that came out Wednesday. I have some thoughts here. You and I talk about how I'm someone that's very interested in this doing well, very interested in the content. I mean, I am the target audience. I'm showing you right now. You can't see on the podcast, but I'm showing you right now the full
Oh,
run
the
of
secret.
Secret Invasion, the comic books, right? So I have these. I've read these. I'm
Cool.
very invested in this doing well. But just some things that didn't quite land with me. It was a good episode of television. It was good things that didn't quite land with me. There was, without any spoilers, there's a perceived emotional moment at the end of the first episode, which I think they hoped would hit harder than it did. Didn't
Okay.
impact me as much as I thought it would. And then it was just, and maybe they just felt this necessary. But in a 6 episode season, this first episode was so much exposition and so much just explanation of, here's what's happening.
Oh, I hate that.
For a spy show that's supposed to be quite dramatic, intense over 6 episodes, you just, took one of the 6 just to sort of read me a paragraph about what's going on. And so, some issues with it, but I have interest in it, and it was good. And the character development was decent. And so I'll be finishing it. But just found it to be good, not great, not bad, just sort of looking for more, I guess.
Yeah, well, so it goes, I guess. What did you think about the credits? There was some controversy in the world about the credits for Secret Invasion, the opening title sequence this
Yeah.
week, which I guess is known, right, was created by AI, to put it succinctly. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it was interesting to see. I think the day after the episode came out, the director put out something saying this didn't cost any jobs. There was no one that was impacted by this. No one didn't get hired because we did it this way. I think it just was odd because it just looked awful. It looked bad. For something that you could do, I don't need you to do James Bond, but something that you could just have some kind of intriguing or mysterious credits to this show. It just didn't quite fit with me.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there were a number of people that first day who were really mad about it on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, I think part of this is the Twitter effect.
Yeah.
We're doing discourse, or whatever. But I mean, I'm sympathetic to that enough, but also part of my initial reaction was, well, I kind of want to see these things. So I've only seen the credits to the show. Because I was like, well, I'm curious. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say, it's sort of mediocre at best. So I don't know. Maybe a plus side kind of takeaway if we're looking for something positive to say about this. Maybe it shows that at least where things stand right now, these computer programs really can't do as well as human beings could do if your reaction is saying, well, these credits really could have been better if they'd done things another way. So
and obviously different professionals, but gave the writers that are on strike some happiness to see that, probably. One of their big issues.
I mean, I think that's part of why it fed into the Twitter discourse.
Definitely
is because you do have the ongoing writers' strike. I guess the DGA agreed, the directors union agreed to a new contract yesterday. We could have been on that. But one of the things that's been at play in these labor disputes is the use moving into the future of generative AI, of these technologies that are really still pretty nascent. Like I feel like we don't exactly know what they can do. So I really get the worry, and how for many it might feel like cold comfort to say, well, they aren't very good because they're not worried about what they can do now or what they can do in the future, and the potential of some future where you could potentially have film or television entirely produced by artificial intelligence, which is maybe a decent seg to briefly talk about Black Mirror. Did you watch that one?
I have watched a couple, and I'm glad you segued into that, because I read your piece this week on Black Mirror, just sort of in the season as a whole, and I was interested in your thoughts after you watched and have analyzed all episodes of this season 6.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit down on it. We published a piece the other day It's called what is it called? Why Black Mirror season 6 is so toothless, a theory. I think that's the title that we landed on. So people can go read that. I mean, people do seem to be reading it, which I appreciate. And so yeah, I mean, I have those thoughts on the season as a whole, which I would clarify here. I don't at all want to tell anyone who really enjoyed season 6 that they shouldn't, or something like that. That's sort of kind of never my intent. I never want to tell people to not like things they like. It's sort of enjoy all the things you can. I don't know if this is a good mantra, but I felt like it really, the season as a whole, just didn't cut me the way that Black Mirror in the past has. There was nothing that really just made me say, "Oh my God, you are correct."
Yeah,
being a human being is just like not acceptable. I'll go over here for a little while, or whatever. Like, a lot of it was pretty good. There's one episode that I really, really disliked. But a lot of it I thought was pretty enjoyable. But it's really only Jonah's Awful, which I was just alluding to, that felt to me like, oh, well, this is a proper Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
This is doing the kind of thing that I expect from this show. And it was pretty good. But I still felt like, why didn't you punch me in the face? It still kind of felt like it held back a little. But
it's not one of the episodes that I've seen yet, but I have noticed that is the episode obviously getting all the juice at being on a about a streaming service and just sort of the tie between that and obviously where this show is housed. But I thought that for the what you said the title was, I thought the word toothless was actually quite good, because it is, we think about mirror as prescient, as something that looks towards what we could be or who we might be. And at least for the couple that I've seen, it lacked a little bit of that, at least compared to last few seasons.
Yeah, or the history. So what is the other one that you saw? I know you saw Demon 79, because to everyone listening, Ryan wrote on that episode. We split up the kind of recap and review duty this time around. So what's the other one that you've seen?
Yeah, the only other one that I've seen, and I believe I've seen most of it, is the Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett episode.
Yeah, Beyond the Sea.
Beyond the Sea. That's right. Yeah. So, and I watched that right away, almost late at night, then moved directly into Demon 79 and 4 hours into that one. So, yeah, I mean, I just have not spent too much time yet with that full season.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't mean to undermine your motivation to do so either. I mean, look, for the most part, I thought, well, like both of those two episodes, like I watched Demon 79 and go, that was pretty fun. I watched Beyond the Sea. That was good. Maybe a little slow, but I enjoyed it. The acting was really good. The story's pretty good. All of that kind of stuff. But there's really no episode in season 6, besides maybe Jonah's Awful, that I can see myself at points in the future during conversation being like, oh, like that Black Mirror episode. Which, I don't know. I'm definitely a little bit disappointed.
And I'll just on to that end, on Demon 79, the one I spent so much time with, I enjoyed so much the actors in that episode, the cinematography, how it was developed and made to look as in this late 70s horror movie. But I didn't take anything out of it in terms of what you're talking about. The plot, the meaning, the message behind it, that didn't land for me as much as, say, other episodes and other seasons have done.
Yeah. Basically. So maybe it's a job. My theory is, or you can go read my article and read Ryan's article too on Demon 79. It's good. He did a good job on that. But yeah, my theory was, I don't know, maybe something about them being just kind of afraid to really tackle the problems of this world that we're living in right now. I mean, because what do? You get Demon 79 set in 1979, Beyond the Sea set in an alternate 1969. Maybe it was an alternate 1979 too. Maisie Day is set in 2006. You haven't watched that one yet. Okay. Like Jonah's Awful feels like it's now. Lock Henry also feels like it's now. But it's not just that, it's just this feeling of how often over the past few years has someone said, well, we're living in an episode of Black Mirror, and maybe we are, but then Black Mirror comes out with new episodes and they're not grappling with any of that stuff really. That feels like it would be making you say that for the past 3 years or 4 years since season 5 came out. So anyhow,
Yeah.
we can, I guess, leave it there unless you want to add anything else on that front.
No, I think the other thing I've been spending my time with, revisiting season 1 of The Bear and this first half of season 2. Maybe we should take a quick break and dive into that.
Okay, sounds good. So spoiler warning for what's on the other side of our brief break here. I'm going to plug a little music in here. When we resume, we're going to pick up talking about the first half of season 2 of The Bear on FX on Hulu. That would be episodes 1 through 5. No spoilers for anything after episode 5 because neither of us have watched any further as of yet.
Right.
So, all right, let's take 10 seconds or whatever, and then we'll pick back up on the other side.
Okay, so Cameron, we're going to begin our coverage of season 2 of The Bear today, looking specifically at the first half, episodes 1 through 5. We'll be diving deep into some of the details of these episodes, the themes, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we expect perhaps in some of the episodes to come. But we are going to spoil details for those first 5 episodes, so be sure you've seen those if you'd like before this conversation. So just general thoughts. I have sort of 2 main questions. So what do you think about the first 5 episodes you've seen? And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum. What do you think about this philosophy of dropping all the episodes at once like they did?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start there because it's potentially very boring to people. I don't like it when they drop everything all at once for several reasons. It feels like some people will watch it all right away. You do kind of get a massive buzz, or maybe a couple of days, which it feels like is going on with The Bear right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people maybe, have lives and watch it a little bit later, and they might already feel like they've missed the point where everyone was talking about The Bear. And I also think that it makes it really rather difficult to do the kinds of things that we want to do. Write articles on these shows, hopefully dig in a bit, think them through, have a podcast like this where we're discussing it. I mean, the alternate reality where we could have had a recap of each episode of The Bear once a week for the next 2 months just would be way preferable to me. But I know that there are people in the world who prefer to binge things, and there's like no common ground. What do you think about this?
I am, I'm generally with you on this discussion. I prefer to space this out, have time to think, consider, review, sort of think critically about what's happening in these. Even some of the models we've seen lately. I know that Disney Plus has done this. Amazon tends to do this. Maybe dropping, if you've got a 10-episode season, maybe they drop 2 or 3 at the beginning to put that hook in you, and then they'll do 1 each week. That seems to be a popular model, but there's just not many people that do this, drop everything at once. And yes, so from a perspective of needing to create content around it, it's difficult, obviously. And then from a perspective of needing to or wanting to digest it, I just prefer to do it the other way.
I mean, it may not bother me so much, but I rarely feel like the decision is made in service of the show.
Good point.
I mean, the all at once model is sort of a Netflix model.
Yep.
And if you want to stick to that, if you're Netflix, you want to stick to that. I get it. That's expectation. People who have Netflix expect everything all at once. I don't quite know why you would do it. The middle ways you're talking about, okay, like maybe if you need more than 1 episode to hook people, I don't really always do. But if you feel like you do, if it was serving the content, but I have counter examples I could bring up where it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned Raised by Wolves earlier. I'm going to plug Raised by Wolves again. Go find that somewhere. That show is great. They canceled it, and maybe they already did take it off of Max by now. Go find Raised by Wolves. It's a lot of fun. But with that one, I think they came out the gate with 2 or 3 episodes, and I was like, man, I finished the first episode of that. And I wish they'd made me sit with that for a week, But no, you can just like press play on the next one right away. So, I don't know. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's right. They've done it. We can't do anything about it. We have to deal with it. We'll see what happens moving forward. I'll just say, generally, I'm very interested in where these first 5 episodes have taken us. It is absolutely different than season 1 in terms of, clearly they're building a restaurant versus trying to serve people within a restaurant. That's the plot is really different, but it's a different model and structure than what we experienced in that first season last summer. And so I'm just sort of curious, have the first 5 episodes, anything stood out to you in terms of the decision making, in terms of the plot points, in terms of how the cast is mostly separated into small groups, as opposed to we were all sort of in this small kitchen last year? So what's, if anything, has stood out to you on that?
Right. Yeah. Good. So, maybe let's start with the structure, because I have some thoughts about that. First of all, I love it. Okay, but I'll say more. I'll go on a length about that, and then maybe we can, after that, dig in more on like each particular character, because you're right.
Yeah,
they're largely separated. So I'm curious how you feel about this. But to answer the question first, I guess I really like it. It's the structure is really interesting to me, of what they're doing here. That it is largely, the stories have a way of coming together, but then also existing in separation. Feels like there's a lot more space, in a certain way, that's giving a depth to the characters. Because what happens is we end up focusing on one particular character. If you think about it, I don't know if you quite have thought about it this way. It's not just episode 4, which I know you want to talk about, which focuses on Marcus, but meaningfully episode 3 focuses on Sydney.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually a moment that I wanted to call attention to in particular, in terms of how I think the structure of season 2 is really interesting, and I'm really liking what they're up to. They do this thing where they introduce Claire at the end of episode 2, right? Which I know we're going to talk about Claire. We will. And then in episode 3, Carmy gets the call from her and so on. She wants help moving. She's asking if she can use his van and all of that, right? Now, if you're all like me, part of you is like, oh yeah, man, I want to see that. But you don't get that. Instead, they follow Sydney. The rest of the episode follows Sydney. They pull this move where it's like, that Carmy is going to go and see Claire. He's going to do this thing. Maybe you're like me, already feeling kind of invested in this, romantic possibility between those two.
Yeah.
Maybe some people weren't. But they don't go to that. They follow Sydney. And of course, Carmy has sort of stood her up, because they were supposed to go and taste food together. They follow Sydney instead. So, I think it's, I think the structure is really kind of servicing the characters well. I don't know. What are your overall thoughts about this?
That's exactly how I'd put it as well. I think that so much of season 1 was focused on Richie and Carmy, Richie versus Carmy, Richie and Carmy and their relationship, and what they meant to one another, what they do for one another. But the writers were able to say, we've got some real stories here we can tell. And so let's take some time to do that with each one of these. As you said, Sid and sort of her journey in episode 3, Marcus, which we see in episode 4. We see a lot of Tina in episode 5, right? So we're in Ibram's sort of been throughout. We're sort of seeing these pieces of who he is and who he wants or doesn't want to be.
That's what I'm saying. I totally expect episode 6 to focus on Ibram. People listening to this know already. We don't know. We haven't watched it yet. Okay.
Right.
But But given the structure in episode 5, you were seeing. I mean, it's kind of weird. There are questions. We were seeing Abraham. He wasn't in class.
Yep.
He's instead like sitting on the boardwalk or whatever, smoking
Yeah,
a cigar.
exactly.
Tina hasn't talked to him. Something's going on with that guy. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so far, I feel like it's been working really well. The characters were all established really well in season 1, and very immediately
Yeah.
and quickly, if you think about it, if you go back to season 1. But that we're giving a bit more space and we're getting a bit more depth. While at the same time, it's not entirely cut off from, the happenings that we keep circling
Yeah.
back to.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Richie. I think you wrote on you wrote on episode 1,
Right.
and are going to do some follow-up writing so people can keep an eye out on the site, tvobsessive.com, if you want to read things. I hope you want to read things. But, you made a point of emphasis in what you wrote in episode 1 about that scene with Richie asking about purpose.
Yeah.
And, maybe we should talk about that, because I think you may be right that meaningfully that's kind of setting the stakes of the whole season.
Yeah, it was interesting to me. I think in the piece I compared it to, that conversation between Richie and Carmi talking about Richie wondering what his purpose is, and just hits you at the very beginning of this season, and I paralleled it to the very beginning of season 1 when, before we even know what's going on here, Carmi comes face to face with this grizzly bear that's on the bridge there over the river in Chicago, and so you get this sense of, will that be what this season is about? As we started now to follow some of these characters and look at what their purpose might be. What is Sydney's? What is Tina's? What is Richie's? What is Sugar's? Obviously she's much more involved now in this season. But I just thought that conversation was interesting, and also just provided quite a bit of foreshadowing that this is what we're going to look at this season. What is the purpose of these people, and maybe how can they harness that, come together with it to build this thing?
Right. No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And more so, or further to the piece, right? On the one hand, there's a question of like, what is their purpose in the restaurant? What is their purpose in relation to the bear, the restaurant that they're creating, and what will it be? But then at the same time, is this their purpose in a more existential sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that Richie is feeling that, which I always felt there's depth to Richie's character. He's kind of one of these blustery guys who's got a lot of bravado or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
he's got a little weeping heart in there, and that he's concerned about this, and the restaurant is a prism into that, right?
Yeah.
Because specifically, it's like, what is my purpose in relation to what we're doing here, and do I have one? And we're butting up against existential crisis territory, which is great. It's my wheelhouse. But that beyond that, it's kind of the same thing for everyone. There's a question of is this what they should be doing? Which I think continues to be a bit of a through line with Carmi himself.
Yeah.
It's also early on in the season, right, where he looks up fun in the dictionary. It's
like that's right.
Because it's like he's recognizing that he loves this, but does he have fun? Is it fun? Is there fun in his life? And I think that then the introduction of Claire makes sense in relation to that. So maybe let's go there. How did Claire strike you? She shows up the first time at the end of episode 2, as I recall.
Yeah, she does, and I'm one. I know this is always a question about these things. I'm one that thought they had some pretty good chemistry from the very beginning, right? They had some sort of past relationship. Haven't seen each other in a long time. I think they have good chemistry. I had this question that I posed to you as to why. Trying to think, why would Carmi originally give her a wrong number? And maybe it's just that he feels like he needs to be so focused on this mission, on this goal of opening this place. But clearly she has talked him out of that, and they are moving pretty quickly into something that's a substantial relationship. And the question is, well, what happens with that? But I enjoyed Claire as a character. I enjoyed the relationship that they're building, because I think that they do well on screen together.
All right, so I have multiple thoughts here. I want to be sure to hit them all. So just noting to you, like, we're going to talk about Claire for a minute.
Yeah.
First, I do want to say in relation to what you say that I agree completely. I thought the chemistry was immediate, the rapport was immediate. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that part of this, part of what fed into this was how they were framing the shots and so on, which
Yes. Yes.
was distinctive. And I'm not going to try to describe them, but to call your attention to them if you've seen it or if you are watching it again. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Ryan. Basically, I fell in love with her immediately on Carmi's behalf. I was like, you got me. Claire's got me. I'm head over heels. Immediately, just from that one scene. And maybe he isn't quite,
Yeah.
or the question about why he gives her a fake phone number. I have some thoughts about that. But first, let me ask you, did you call that number?
No, no, I did not. Is there something there?
No.
Oh, and it was a five. It was a 555, which means it's not a usable number, right? Didn't he?
No, this is no longer true. They changed things in the world now,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because everyone has to have an area code, and that
I
complicates
see.
things. Maybe it is still true that 555s don't tend to be actually existing numbers. That's what, if you put it in your phone and call it, which I did.
Yeah.
I got a little message that was like, your call cannot be completed as dialed. One of those.
Yeah.
So they didn't take the opportunity for a little
Yeah.
kind of guerrilla marketing,
Right. Right.
which I mean, hey, just recently there was a phone number in Yellow Jackets,
Yes. Yes.
and if you called that phone number, you got content.
Yep. You did.
You got and they changed it right before the season finale too. They changed what you got. So I mean, hey, yeah, I
Oh.
called the number,
Oh.
but to let people know if they didn't, there's nothing there. Why did he give her a fake number? I think you're starting to get at it.
Yeah.
But it comes back up again later. I think in episode 5, she asks him again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is right before they're really kind of, I don't know what the word I want is, consummating something.
Yeah.
They're on the track of that when they're at the party
Yeah.
and so on. I think putting all this together, I mean, I think there's a way in which he doesn't know
Yeah.
why he gave her a fake number. He hesitates. Certainly, he must feel that chemistry we're talking about immediately. He must feel that
Yeah.
rapport, that connection. That's a connection to his past, but it's something sort of good in his past in contrast to something painful. So I mean, it made sense to me what I'm trying to articulate. How I don't think it's just some thought of not feeling like he has time for love
Mhm.
because of the restaurant.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's some just hesitation about the idea of even thinking he deserves it or something like this.
Yeah. And
um
maybe it goes back to, again, everything circling back to purpose, that he has this job to do in terms of what his brother left him. Does he have time to have a purpose that deviates from that to give someone else the attention he feels like he should give to what his brother left him? I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, but it seems like he's sort of, at least through 5 episodes, has made his decision on that.
yeah, here's what I want to try to say, because it's very hard, because I think what I really want to say is there is no justification, both I mean this both in terms of one that would make sense to us and just people in the world in general, or one that would make sense to Carmi himself.
Yeah.
I think that at the same time, it works. I believe it. I believe that he would do this.
Yeah.
I get it at some level with his character, but I think it would be a mistake to imagine that he's got some well-articulated line of reasoning in his own mind about why he gave her the fake number. I
Yeah.
don't think he does. I think meaningfully he does not know. he doesn't have that kind of transparency of self-consciousness to know, well, I gave her, anything he'd come up with would be a kind of post hoc rationalization.
Yeah.
And when she pushes him on it, what does he say? He says something like, I like you so much, or something like
That's
that.
what he says. Yeah. That's his reason.
Right. So read into that as you will. Again, that I like you so much, I'm afraid I'm going to get too sucked into this and not do
Yeah.
the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. I like you so much, and I'm a piece of shit who doesn't deserve anything good in the world.
Yeah.
You read into it. What you will.
So do you think, having not seen the last half of the season, do you think, we saw him or ditch Sydney on the food tour there that you referenced earlier. Do you think this becomes an issue where it causes a rift between him and Sid as they try to complete this job?
Well, I mean, I think that what you see in that episode is her doubting, or at least worrying. I mean, think about doubt as being in that space of uncertainty about Carmi as her partner in all of this. She goes around, she talks to all of these people, and that keeps kind of coming up. Do you have a partner that you can trust?
Yeah.
Do you trust him? And that it's at least kind of throwing that into question, and that's sort of the point when she gets so upset about not being told they had to knock down walls and things like this. At least that's how I read that, is that, I mean, Carmi's right, perhaps there's no other choice. There's no real reason why she needed to be consulted. But it's one of those things like, well, but are we really in this together? And if you really believed we were in this together, of course you would have felt like you had to talk to me about it, and you didn't, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think that in some ways, in response to your question, it's central to what's going to be going on in this season, because it's a central thing of Sydney and Carmi making this restaurant together. It's his restaurant, but it's her restaurant.
Yeah.
But I don't think I predict like a schism.
Right.
I predict more dramatic tension, I guess. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, that's the way I read it as well, that there will be some tension. Maybe it seems manufactured, maybe not, as part of this relationship, but clearly there are going to be more headaches and misunderstandings ahead with the opening of this place. But I think inevitably, it's my read on it, or my guess is that it's going to make Carmi and Sydney understand that this has to be a strong partnership. It has to be something where they do this together. They can't do it in sort of separate modes or in separate roads. They have to, they must be almost foundationally connected in every piece of it. And I think that they're sort of setting this up to say, okay, they're going to realize that at some point. How do they get there? Well, it may take this sort of thing that looks like it might divide them, but eventually they get to that point.
Yeah, interesting. At least I hope so. I kind of presume so, because I don't think the Bear is going to give us a tragic ending to season 2.
Yeah,
I doubt it. Which it could. I mean, there's that the narrative path would be that they try to do this, they utterly fail.
Yeah,
everyone's sad. Series over.
Yeah,
what I mean? Maybe someone dies too, right? I mean, but I don't think that's where this show is going, and I think you're right. And the other aspects of this too that I know we wanted to hit on with, we mentioned Richie briefly.
Yes,
there's also stuff with Sugar or Natalie, and I mean, I really enjoy her character. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I actually think she is doing an amazing job this season. I enjoyed her when she was on Saturday Night Live. She's a pretty funny character, but this is just a complete dramatic turn that I just didn't know was in her wheelhouse.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, my favorite, I love the scene when Uncle Jimmy comes and he's like giving them shit. And when she turns on the I just didn't know what to do. And Jimmy, that bit. Oh my God, because as she's walking out of the room with him, she's like turning to Richie going, shut up.
Yeah.
But it's a brilliant, because I think what that really shows is she is fully aware that what she's doing in that moment is emotionally manipulating Uncle Jimmy,
Right.
basically, right?
Right.
To the benefit of the restaurant. And yeah, I mean, I've been enjoying her role in this a lot. I did in season 1 too, but I like to see her in the mix of it. I don't know, we're talking about purpose. Does it make sense for Natalie to be doing this? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
she's still kind of not fully committed to the idea that she's the project manager, but I also love how the guys refer to her as mom. I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
you've told mom.
Well,
But
and I don't think we've seen, so we haven't seen Pete, her husband, yet this year
that's what
or
I was
this
going to say.
season.
We haven't seen her husband. Where's he doing? Does he know
So
she's
I just
pregnant?
don't. Yeah, she is,
And does
and
her
just in
husband
terms of
know she's pregnant? That guy's sort of a
yeah,
doofus. Does he know she's pregnant?
I,
It's
yeah.
possible she doesn't. He doesn't know.
I just don't think she sees her purpose being the life that she had with him. She wants to be
Yeah.
part of this family, of this community. So even though she's reluctant to do it, it hates the experience and hates what's happening.
Yeah.
She sees it as sort of, this is sort of who I want to be with, and this is the people I'm going to confide in that I'm pregnant. We have no idea if Pete knows or not.
Yeah, exactly. He is kind of a doofus. So, I mean, what
Yeah.
I expect from the structure that's laid out, and this might be totally wrong, and again, people listening will have already seen it, and probably I'm going to go watch it tonight and look back and go, oh, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
But almost what I would expect from how they're mapping out the season is that in the latter half, we'll get an Ibrahim episode, we'll get a Sugar episode,
Yeah.
and then I don't know what else. Again, I don't necessarily mean something that's somehow entirely focused on this one character,
Yeah.
but kind of like Lost, which we talked about it before, to where one character is really in the spotlight, and I sort of expect that will be the case here.
Yeah.
Um,
You want to touch on any of these other characters quickly before we wrap up the first half of the season?
Yeah, let's circle back around to on this point. Circle back around to episode 4, the Marcus episode, which we wanted to talk about. How did this one land for you in particular? It's kind of its own self-contained story.
Yeah. I'll be honest. My first thought was, well, you can tell when a show has become a breakout hit when they could afford to send a crew and actors over to Copenhagen for weeks to film an episode. That was
Right.
sort of my initial cynical thought to this. But I as a fan of what Marcus did and who it looked like he wanted to be in season 1, I enjoyed him getting to take part in something like this, and also loved the interaction with Will. With Will Poulter, I just thought that was a phenomenal sort of pairing there, as sort of mentor and student. So I enjoyed it. It took us a little bit away from what we're trying to accomplish. I enjoyed that episode quite a bit.
I mean, I thought it was nice. It was meditative. It really kind of gave it some depth to Marcus. You've got the scene where he's rescuing the biker, which I don't know. I mean, I read that as just kind of showing that he's a good guy. I don't know if it's going to tie into anything. Did you have any other
I
thoughts
found it
about the
odd.
biker scene?
Yeah, I found that an odd thing to throw in, but again, just that, he is committed to and motivated to do what's right. He's committed to motivated to do whatever it takes to make something right. And we've seen that when he was so hyper focused on his donuts and his stuff in season 1. But maybe just that he has got this thing inside of him with his mother that we've seen and now in the first few episodes with this guy who was injured. He's got purpose and he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to do, but he's not going to let it sort of distract him from maybe the person that he is. And maybe that comes into play later, right? Maybe there's some sort of decision he has to make with his mother being so sick and something that he has to do with the restaurant, and he has to come into a decision between those two things. Maybe just sort of setting the stage for what type of person he is when he's forced to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of hope not, because I my hope is that this isn't that show.
Yeah.
I mean, it would almost be a cliched sort of thing to move this in the direction of, oh, well, his mother's sick. Oh, now Marcus has to make a choice. Is he really going to pursue his dream, or is he going to care for his sick and dying mother?
Yeah.
I don't think they're quite going in that way. I think they're sort of nicely playing instead with the idea that, look, we have our dreams, we're pursuing them, you can pursue them, you can find the purpose in being really, really good at something, or
Mhm.
striving to be. And if it's making, desserts, that's awesome,
Yeah.
actually. And then you have that nice long conversation. And it doesn't mean that you have to, um, neglect caring about people. Okay, so I guess we'll leave it there for this time. Thanks again for listening to the TV Obsessive Podcast. Cameron Crane, Ryan Kirksley has encountered some technical difficulties, so we are kind of cutting this a little bit shorter than intended. I do think we were wrapping up. For what it's worth, either way, we do intend to spend our next podcast continuing to discuss the Bear season 2. That will be probably in about a week from now, and work on getting that out as soon as we can. In the meantime, please do read the website, tvobsessive.com. You can follow the site on Twitter, on Facebook, also now on Instagram. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you might get podcasts. You can find it on YouTube. If you want to check out the YouTube channel, it's the TV Obsessive YouTube channel. You can find these things. And so we'll leave it there for this time. Apologies for encountering a little technical hiccup here. You're left with me to wrap things up. Ryan will be back with me next time, and we'll see you again. Thanks for listening.